Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman. Here, as always, and for the third time this week, is Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, you got to watch practice this morning. I did not. No one cares at all what I have to think, how I feel. Let's go ahead. I'll just sit here quietly while you talk about what you get to see at Ohio State football practice this morning.
Well, Tom, it was great to be back. And that's even though I had to be out of the house by like 7 in the morning, which I do not like.
leaving the house at a time that like most adults would leave the house to commute to a job. Like, yeah.
Not only did I have to leave early in the morning, I actually had to leave the house, which I also do not care for. I had to scrape the windows.
I was going to say it was cold enough that pants were probably involved. I know you're not a big fan of those, so
don't even get me started.
Tough break, bud. Sorry about that.
Let's try to focus on Ohio State and not my problems. But yes, we did get to see practice. Today was, I believe, the 7th practice, if I do my math right. As Tom does the math in his head.
I'm making my math face. I think 7 is correct. Yes,
because it's a Friday, then a Monday, Wednesday, correct. Friday, then a Monday, Wednesday.
Because I was trying to remember what day they started on. They started on a Friday, so this is number 7. Yes,
and they did actually do some scrimmaging today. We, of course, did not get to see it because that's not how things work at Ohio State. But that's not me complaining. That's just explaining to everybody. We got to see about 23 minutes of practice, I believe, is what we were told. 2 periods, the jogging, the stretching, and some individual drills. But like I said, it's just good to be back in there. It's always good to see Tony Alford in there swinging a bat and hitting his running backs, smiling. He's like the Cheshire Bat. You know, he just having a good time doing what he's doing. And Kerry Combs, of course, is always fired up. But let's get to the news that came out of practice. 2 position moves. And before we got into practice, we were told there were a couple of players experimenting at positions. And so you go in thinking, okay, well, that's not that unusual. But so we go in there. Turns out G. Scott, sophomore wide receiver, has moved to tight end. And 6th-year running back / wide receiver H-back Demario McCall is then working with the defensive backs. Does that mean these are permanent things? After talking to Ryan Day, it sure seemed like, yeah, they are for Ohio State, because this was G. Scott. Both players came to Ryan Day and said, or came to their position coach and said, let's talk about this. And let me ask you, what did you think of the G. Scott thing as soon as you heard it? Like, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was, it makes sense for someone to move from wide receiver to tight end based on the incredible depth they have at wide receiver right now and the relative lack of proven depth at tight end. Like, I mean, that's a very obvious move to make. And based on what Day said, you know, Scott is someone who, you know, is playing at 215 pounds right now. And it's like, he is really working hard to stay at 215 pounds. So what if he just put on a little more weight, which his body seems to want him to do, and play at 225 or 230 or whatever it is, and then go be a tight end. And if that's if that's a spot that he can get on the field more this year and potentially be a more immediate impact player, like, great, that's fine. That seems like that makes a lot of sense, because you're going to have guys, you know, I mean, you've had Mookie Cooper transfer out. You've had G. Scott now looking at tight end, and Demario McCall now to the defensive back room. You know, I think there are not enough footballs to go around to get all of these guys game reps. And, you know, these are all guys who are, you know, came in as, you know, at least high 4 stars, at least. So, you know, these are guys who are coming in expecting to play, expecting to make a difference. And, you know, if you are not in that top 6, or, you know, you think you might be better suited for another spot, like, yeah, go get it. Like, if you can solve a personal, you know, you can solve a personal issue where you want to be playing more than you are, and you can also solve a team issue, which those are 2 spots where Ohio State probably needs, you know, would not mind having an extra body. Like, yeah, absolutely, go get it.
And the thing about the tight end situation is Jeremy Ruckert is strong enough and big enough to play on the line now, and so that they can have, like, G. Scott could be the second tight end, split out and flexed out, because he's not going to be on the line, I would think, hardly at all. this year. And so this makes him, you can put those two together, and now you've got interesting things. And I know as soon as I heard the move, the Kyle Pitts thing just can't stray far from your mind when you've got a guy who's 6'3" and 215 now, but sounds like he'll be 225 by the morning, because it's just like, as Homer Simpson told us, you don't win friends with salad. And like, it seems like G. Scott is all like, I'm tired of salads. I would like to have a burger and live my life and just become the tight end that I guess he was destined to be, because Ryan Day said that they look at everybody's frames and decide what they can handle, and they don't seem to have any concerns that he can put on the necessary weight. And what is the necessary weight? Go back to Kevin Wilson a few weeks ago talking about Jeremy Ruckert and how he didn't name the name, but they were talking to one of the top tight ends in the game who played at 240 pounds. So is that a target right now for G. Scott? I don't know that he can get there right this year, but I mean, he could.
I mean, I can tell you from experience, you can put on 25 pounds in 6 months or so. I don't know if you can put on 25 pounds of good weight. I don't know if you can put on 25 pounds of athletic weight, but you can put on 25 pounds in 6 months if you really want to. But I don't think I don't think that's the way he wants to do it. So it may take a little longer, but you can play at 225, 230, and then be at 240 next year. I mean, this is only his second year on campus, so he's going to have at least one more year. And if when Ruckert leaves after this year, if G. Scott is, ready to be, he's not 6'6" like Pitts is, but he's 6'3". And, if you're 6'3", 240, like, yeah, you could do some damage in the slot because he's someone who is like a really good natural pass catcher. I think we've seen him during, some of the limited practice windows we've had last fall going into the season, and then just watching during warmups, like he can go up and get it. So if he puts a little more bulk on there, I mean, he would be probably a little more comfortable running over the middle at that point and all of that. And, that is a really intriguing position switch to me.
And go back to, remember when everybody wanted Roy Hall to move to tight end? Just flex out. Come on, get everybody out there. You got Roy Hall. He's already like 235 pounds, 230 pounds. Noah Brown, there was some thought, like, you come to Ohio State and you're like 6'1", 240. It's like, well, you're going to go one of two ways. You're either a tight end or you're going to have to drop that weight. And he did. He dropped like 20 pounds in a year. And so it is, these things get talked about, but they haven't they've rarely been done for Ohio State from a receiver to a tight end. So that's interesting to me. And the potential is, with this passing game, I think it's pretty significant if you use it. And Tom, I've been saying it's the year of the tight end, but maybe it's the year of the tight ends again, which maybe we also said last show.
Yeah, I think that may have come up when we were talking about Cade Stover and his potential. And
correct.
Here's the thing: you could have two guys you're comfortable with and still want a third guy at tight end.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that they played 3 tight ends a bunch last year, and you have injuries, you have whatever. I mean, who knows if we're through the worst of the COVID thing? You feel like you are, and then the Mets aren't playing the first 4 games of the season. Thanks, Washington Nationals. Great job. Good job with that.
How's that Lindor money right now? It's being wasted.
It's so good. It is so great. I'm so happy. You know whose money it isn't? Mine. I don't care. Give me the good baseball players. Thus endeth baseball chat. Back to football. Yeah, I think they can. I mean, you're going to want 3 tight ends. You need depth there. If one guy gets hurt, you can't just take all the 12 personnel formations out of your playbook. Let's, okay, next man up. And I don't know if Joe Royer and true freshman Sam Hart, like, I don't know if they're ready yet. And we talked to Mitch Rossi and Corey Rao on Tuesday this week. Again, like that's fine. There are options there, but if you have as many guys as you can who you really trust to be potential impact guys in the passing game, like, great, whatever it takes. This seems like it's at least worth exploring and could be like really a win-win thing for both the player and the team.
Yeah, and then you talk about having G. Scott flexed out, and then if he goes out wide, does a safety follow him? Does a linebacker follow him? And now you've got that guy out on him all, manned up out wide, probably, not the best matchup for a defense, and you just find different ways to use these guys. And Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson are pretty good at that, and I'm sure they're looking at ways, and as Urban Meyer would say, writing up plays on a napkin and drawing up plays. So we'll see where that goes. We know there's going to be more footballs to go around now that Demario McCall is on defense, because he won't be commanding the ball on offense as he always has at Ohio State. It is I have no idea how to say this, but I'm going to try.
While you think about it, I just want to let people appreciate the last 10 seconds of this podcast and the fact that you promoted this podcast with the fact that you'd actually prefer to do a live show. But since we have not prepared anything, I don't want to put Tom in a bad situation.
Did you just find that?
Yeah, I pulled up the thing just so we had the questions ready, and I was like, am I the one who would be in a bad situation if we were doing this live? Well, go on. Continue with your thought about.
As I was not saying, this is Demario's 6th year. The first 5 years have been spent back and forth at running back and slot receiver. And to go to Ryan Day and say, you know what, let's try defense. I think everybody and their mother who is aware of Demario McCall has been like, gosh, feels like a 1,500-yard rusher at Akron. Or, feels like a guy who would be an all-MAC person at Kent or something like that. And yet his desire to stay at Ohio State and there have been rumblings that he's been unhappy here, there, but I think we were all surprised that he returned this year and in this 6th year. So it's been a pretty crazy ride. And now this last bit is just like, you know what? I haven't played defense yet. Let's give it a go. And then Ryan Day, I was told today, somebody told me at Ohio State that Demario had an interception this week and has actually looked pretty good, I guess, working in the nickel. And then we talked to Ryan Day. He's like, yeah, he's actually done really well. Defensive coaches are happy with him, and they think that he is going to help them this year. Now, Tom, what do you make of help? Is he going to play? Is this a guy who is going to help in practice? What do you foresee from Demario on defense this season?
I don't know what is a reasonable expectation for him. I think, you go back to Chris Gamble, and when did Chris Gamble start playing on defense? Wasn't it like the Cincinnati game in 2002?
Yeah, there was a season opener, but I don't know how much he'd been practicing there, right?
Yeah, I just...
Was it the season opener?
Cincinnati wasn't the season opener that year because they played Texas Tech and Washington State before that. But you still... That's not a reasonable expectation. Like, he's immediately a starter and everything's great and he wins games for him. Like, that's not a reasonable burden to put on him. But if he's just in that nickel rotation, like, great, that's fine. Cause he's someone who has all the talent in the world, has never been able to make an impact on offense at any extended play just because they have so much depth, and it hasn't panned out for him. So yeah, if he can just be in the top 3-4 corners, great, fantastic. That's about the best you could possibly expect for him this year. Could he be more than that? Because we've seen him in little bursts. He's so quick and twitchy that it's like, yes, he could. It's not a realistic expectation, but he could be someone who is, it gets into the starting mix, or is, a top 2-3 corner at that point. But it's just, that's not a reasonable thing to expect, but it's a possibility.
And with him helping out at corner, we know Ohio State is now without Sevyn Banks for the rest of the spring, dealing with an injury there. Cameron Brown, of course, is still out. While that is not great that Sevyn Banks is out, I think if there's one guy in the secondary they can afford to lose, it would be Sevyn Banks. And then now you've got all kinds of guys getting reps at corner, which is helping. And Ryan Day even mentioned that this gives the younger guys an opportunity. And you're talking about Denzel Burke and Ryan Watts, Legend Cavazos, Cameron Martinez, even Demario in the slot there. So then slot and nickel are different. Let's we won't get into the weeds there. We'll let Ross do all of that. But Ross Fulton, the X's and O's specialist of the Buckeye Scoop, team. And not having Banks is significant, but for me, it's almost a blessing in disguise. Although, as we know, like they had 7 times last year of doing one-on-ones, drilling one-on-ones with receivers and DBs, and that's not enough. And they've already done it at least once this spring, and you want to build that up. But they need the younger guys to step up more than they need Seven Banks to step up. Almost, I mean, they need them both, but you need more of those younger guys to you need them to move more than you need Seven Banks to.
Yes and no. I think that's true. Where I think you need Seven Banks to step up and be, kind of fulfill the Ohio State cornerback prophecy,
Yes.
which is every year one of these dudes is at least in the discussion to be a first round pick. You need him probably to be that guy, because Cam Brown coming back off the Achilles injury should be back, but probably won't be 100% this fall. And then, you're not going to have one of those first year guys be that guy. So you kind of need that one person to be who you can just put on whoever the other team's best receiver is and just go, okay, that guy's not going to blow up for 150 yards. So you do need that. And, in a way, you're correct that, it's not that important that he's there this spring, because he's not necessarily someone who needs the reps to go from like the ground floor to like playable, decent player. And they need like one guy to be a superstar. They need like 3 or 4 guys to at least be like, oh yeah, okay, this is okay. This is, they need one guy to be the superstar, and they need like 3, 4 guys to be like the Seven Banks from last year, where it's just like, it's not a superstar, but it's okay. And there's options. And if someone goes down, you're not going, oh Lord, we have to play 4 linebackers against a team that very clearly we should not be playing 4 linebackers against because we don't have other guys we trust out here. So yes, I think, and this is going to seem like a hot take, I think it's important that everyone plays well this fall, not just the younger guys, but also the older guys. I think that's going to be an important part of them being a better team this fall. Your thoughts?
I disagree with your Highlander prophecy that there can be only one. I think there needs to be more than one.
Yeah, if they have 5 first round picks in the secondary that are playing like first round picks this fall, yes, I think that raises the ceiling for this team somewhat significantly. Yes. However, in the realm of reality, I'm not sure that's something that I'm going in expecting to have happen. Put it that way. Again,
yes,
I am the hater on the podcast, so that's my role. I understand it.
I'm glad that you do, because Eli Apple in 2014, I don't know that he was much better than Seven Banks. Garyon Conley in 2015, where they still needed that one more step, and maybe if, like you said, get somebody to where Seven Banks was this year, and they're giving a lot of these guys an opportunity to get there. We'll see if it happens. Things are sounding good so far, I think, and we talked to Matt Barnes earlier this week, and the amount of encouraging words is typical. But from hearing from other sources and things like that, it's like, well, maybe it's not all just coach speak, but there's still a long ways to go. And the good news is they've got a number of guys that they can turn to. And then, of course, adding Demario, I don't know that it does much for the outside stuff. And it does maybe make you question, like, are you really that deep if you are bringing over a running back? But if this is a guy asking to do it, then you don't need him at running back. You don't need him at receiver. You can't play him at left tackle. Maybe.
Have you seen him try? I haven't.
Well, like a Freaky Friday job swap with like DeJuan Jones and Demario, that would be interesting.
Might be susceptible to the bull rush, but other than that, I don't know where it could possibly go wrong.
Well, but he's probably he could pull, get out wide, get to that 2nd, 3rd level, 8th level, looking for somebody to block. So there is the secondary will be a work in progress all throughout, but the guys are getting some practice. There wasn't much else from practice. Got to see some punt block attempts in slow motion, which is not quite slow motion, but just a jog through. and it's not quite as fast moving as an actual punt block, which is a surprising thing.
I would imagine it's harder to get there if you're not going full speed, just based on the speed that the game is typically played at, and the margins for error on punt block being relatively slim as they are. I'm just going to play the role of the dear listeners right now and just say, Tony, I'm sure everyone wants to know about the quarterbacks. What did you see of the quarterbacks today?
Oh, the quarterbacks.
That's CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, and Kyle McCord. In case you forgot which people we're talking about.
Sorry, I was watching punting. No, but
B1G.
The funny thing about, and one of the, it's funny said. The first thing you get to watch is Tom, you know, the jogging and the lining up, and first thing you do is you look to see who's lining up in what order, and immediately that gives you an idea. And so it was CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, and Kyle McCord in that order, and that's far from 100% correct. But then as they drilled, it was always CJ. Now we saw 3 quarterback drills, and 2 of those were one was a handoff drill, and one was
based on that.
pitch.
Who's going to based on the handoff and the quick pitch? Who's going to be the starter?
Well, I got to tell you, I liked CJ Stroud was making some NFL pitches. Let's just say, like, he could pitch from one hash to that same hash because he only pitch it like 3 feet. But I like his moxie. He's got a look in his eyes. He's got some swagger. So, and if you got a quarterback with swagger when they pitch the ball, then you've got a winner. Now, if he's wearing a baseball cap backwards, I do not like that.
Were you able to actually see the look in his eye? Because I know they're typically on the far side of the field. Or did you just have like a telephoto lens or binoculars, or are you just speculating on the look in his eye?
No, but there's a swagger factor where if they've got a certain amount of swagger, you know what the eyes look like.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Sorry, I interrupted you before you said the third thing you got to watch them do. I think I and the rest of the listeners were eager to get your synopsis. So go ahead and share your third thing now.
The third thing we got to see them do is throw the ball. Which, you know, was it as impressive as handing it off? No, but you know, you take all of this. We got to see them throw some seam routes basically to their receivers, and you know, maybe like 15, 20 yards, and they all looked fine. There's all of this is going to be on video at BuckeyeScoop.com or on our YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. I took a bunch of video, and so you can see everything most of what I got to see it and make your own judgments. But in the 3 drills of quarterback involvement, it was always CJ Stroud, Jack Miller, and then Kyle McCord. And there has to be an order. But it's always, you know, there is an order for a reason. Now, that doesn't mean Jack Miller isn't getting time with the ones, because he absolutely is. Kyle McCord may be as well, but CJ Stroud was the backup last year. So we remember every meaningful time after that first time Jack Miller came in, there was CJ Stroud, and it continues now. And so until it's somebody else, you know, we're going to assume it's Jack Miller. But again, we're, say, 20% of the way through practice in terms of spring and fall camp.
Well, and we're planning to get another chance to watch a little bit of practice next week. And if we do, it'll be interesting to see if it's that same order. Because I think if you ask the average person what order they would expect things to be running in right now, that's probably the order. You know, guy who was the person who came on when Justin Fields left during the semifinal game, and then other guys who was here last year, and then guy who just showed up in January. Like that's a very logical order for them to be running in. So it's not definitive. It may be a different order next week, but it's like, I think that feels like it's at least a data point. It's not like completely meaningless. There's something there that probably tells you. Now, my question for you, not having gotten to watch practice today, I remember watching Justin Fields 2 years ago when he came in for spring ball, and you know, we're standing on one sideline, and the quarterbacks generally are practicing on the far side of the field, like way down the end zone. Like we're behind the 50 on one side. So you're looking, you know, all the way across the field and then 30, 40 yards down the field. But I remember on watching Justin Fields and the other guys who were there at that point make 20, 30 yard throws, that Justin Fields balls were like noticeably more on a line. Like there's more of an arc, like noticeably more of an arc on other people's throws. So you could tell, like, Justin Fields definitely has the strongest arm of any of these guys. Was there anyone who jumped out to you in that way based on what you got to see today?
No, and I think that's a very good thing because back when it was Baldwin and Fields, you didn't have to see who threw the ball to know who threw it. Like you could just see exactly where the ball leaves his hands and not having seen thrown it. And, well, that was Fields. This one, you couldn't tell. And so I think that's a good thing. And there was, plenty of flatness on these seam throws. And again, they're like 20 yards and then very standard throws. I don't even think there had any interns or anybody waving their hands at the quarterback. It was just quick throws. And yeah, they all look very similar. So I think that's an improvement that we have seen from 2 years ago for sure.
Next question. I'm just thinking back through guys who've like really popped during those limited viewings that we got. I remember 2 years ago watching Garrett Wilson, and they would just throw him like a little quick hitch or something, and he'd stop and then just turn and just explode, and like noticeably quicker, notably more explosive out of that break on that kind of route. Was there anyone in the wide receiver room or anyone in the running back room that was like, just had that like burst that was like a, whoa, okay, I can see it right now?
Well, I will say I saw Garrett Wilson drop a pass, so I'm not sure if that guy's going to cut it.
Man,
that's tough news. I know
that's terrible. And Chris Olave wasn't even there, so
he wasn't there.
Is Ohio State's wide receiver room salvageable this year? My column.
G. Scott has abandoned ship basically. Demario McCall's like, let me play defense. I need out of here. So yeah, nobody, because again, that was the only passing we saw. Was these seam passes where you catch it and then you just jog and then you're done. And so it didn't lend itself to what we saw last year, where it was, oh my gosh, Jackson Smith and Jigba is for real. Like we saw so much 7-on-7 and 1-on-1s that practice. It may have been the entire practice where you could draw some conclusions, and you're there long enough for guys to pop. This was just it's funny now. I'm like in Ryan Day's position where you're asking me like, hey man, anybody stand out? Like who stood out today? I'm like, Tom, I respect.
It's early, Tom.
I respect the question. I know you're trying to, but again, I only got to see the early parts of practice. And so it's just really focused on the fundamentals and the drills. And I understand you want to know this stuff, but it was just so early.
I'm just here representing our listeners because they, like I, did not get to watch practice today. And I mean, if you feel like you want to disparage the quality of their questions, I mean, that's on you, man. That's not. Remember, on Twitter, it's at Tony Gerdeman. Send all your angry, hateful tweets to him. I'm the one who's on your side, friends.
Yeah, right. Hateful Tom. 12-game Buckeye schedule this year. Do you have any questions? Any other questions, or should we go to the people?
Let's go to the people's questions. First one from at J_R_K3. Has anyone else on the team turned vegan? Seriously though, is there someone in particular that you see making a huge impact this year? Position doesn't matter.
The first part was Taraji Mitchell, right? He went vegan and then pescatarian.
Correct. Yes, and I think he's asking anyone else this year.
Yes.
And I'm not aware of anyone else. No one else has fessed up to it, at least.
Ryan Day did say that Mickey Marotti was like inspired by Fields' dedication and his diet last year. But anybody else standing out in spring? Was that it?
Yes.
Like, I don't know. Have you guys heard about Chris Olave?
He was the person who Dallas Gant brought up as a potential breakout person this year.
So, maybe he'll finally do something at Ohio State. They did say the running backs all ran hard today in the scrimmage, and the defensive line was getting into the backfield, which I think is certainly impressive. But I think the talk so far this spring is a lot of it has been Zach Harrison stepping up and himself saying that he's matured and is attacking this after that last game last year. It's just he's been focused on full reps, full 100% on each rep. I also think, Tom, a lot of it has to do with Tommy Togiai. That was his contract here. Just watching to see how that came about. And there's this kind of like realization where, you know what, if I just do this really hard for like another 8 months, then I could be top first, second round draft pick, and then you got it made.
Yeah, then you really do have it made. I mean, you look at guys who I think people would characterize as NFL busts, like a Vernon Golston, for example. And again, this is Tony Gerdeman talking. So if you hear me and you're angry, don't push me down like Chad Henne push Tony down. But someone like Vernon Golston, who I think is someone who shows up on those like NFL draft bust lists. Mm-hmm. It's like, yes, but didn't he go like number 4 overall and probably make $10-20 million? Like, yeah, okay. You can, if you would like to pay me $10 or $20 million, go ahead and say whatever you want that's mean about me. And then you also have obviously the opportunity to have a longer pro career and make even more than that. So yeah, and just it, like you said, it is have that real dedicated, focused 9-12 months to really get yourself in the absolute best position you can for that potential big payday. That's a very easy sell, I would think, for most guys. And if it's not an easy sell, that's probably a pretty big red flag. And with someone like Zach Harrison, who I think we have, find someone who has something bad to say about Zach Harrison in terms of character, and you let me know when you find someone. I haven't found anyone yet. Like he's one of those people that everyone talks about in terms of just like a really, really good kid, hardworking, good, high character kid. Like he's exactly the kind of person you would expect to have, kind of making the most of that. Someone, same thing about J.K. Dobbins a couple of years ago, like Justin Fields last year. Like you can find someone to say something mean about them, but that person is Dan Orlovsky and that person is an idiot. So why don't you step out of the back of the end zone again, moron?
That's what I was going to say about Zach Harrison. You want to find somebody who'll say something bad about him, wait a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's I already did a show on the stupidity of the NFL draft industrial complex earlier this week. That was the morning show on, I don't know, Tuesday or so with Marcus Hartman. You can listen to us talk about how stupid people are in that one. I don't need to do that again.
I listened to the last 2 morning shows today while I was sitting in the parking lot at the Woody. I would recommend the one this morning with the law guy.
Dan Lust. Yes, sports attorney Dan Lust talked about the Alston case, which went before the Supreme Court this week. The TLDR didn't go great for the NCAA, which, oh boy, didn't go real great for them at all. But we had a really interesting talk about the sort of the long-term impacts of NIL legislation and the complete craziness that could be coming with Florida's law going into effect in July and all that kind of stuff. So that's a good listen. And man, that is going to be a really interesting story to follow. This is the second time I've had him on, and it's like, all right, should I just book you now for like June 30th or so? Or
it's what? Like when you schedule the COVID shot. All right, we'll get you the first shot, and then in 3 weeks, I'm going to need you back here.
I'm going to need you back here because something is going to happen, and it's going to be bananas when it does.
What's next on that Twitter?
Next one is from Ross R. Fulton. He is our X's and O's guru. It just says in all caps, Demario. Ross, that's not a question. He's an X's guru and O's guru, not a question guru. But
I think Demario. It needs to be more specific. Demario who?
Good question. That is such an interesting move to me because it's like, if he had made that move 2 years ago, what would that look like? He's someone who I think if you gave him a couple of years, has the athleticism to maybe be able to refine that technique and really turn himself into a pretty good player. I don't know, this is his 6th year. This is his last year. I don't know if he has time to do that now, but it's really intriguing because, as I said earlier, you can't expect him to be like, oh, he's going to be a starter. But if he was a starter this fall and was at least like pretty good, would that completely surprise you?
I don't think he if you give him opportunity, I just assume he's going to produce because that's what he's done. Now on defense, as a nickelback, which I don't know if the nickelback in this defense is going to be is actually the dime, where you kind of already have a base nickel. We're assuming Craig Young, who is also, I believe, working at DB today, as I recollect in my brain about the defensive back workout. Like if he's the Sam, he's kind of the bullet as well, and that's also a nickel. So then if Demario comes in as kind of that dime and playing in the slot, he's quick. He's seen a lot of slot. He knows what that is, what that life is like. So there's that. I don't know who else would be there other than, you've got Marcus Williamson, you've got Lathan Ransom as those two guys who are competing for that cover safety spot. And that is the loser of that one, the second guy there is the automatic nickel, so Demario would be behind them. So that's kind of where I envision him now. I would be surprised if he got playing time, but if he's playing, then obviously there's something there. And so if he plays and then does well, I'm never shocked by guys who play and play well because they should.
Well, the level of talent on this team, just across the deck on this team, is just so high that it's like, well, yes, a normal human being would absolutely not be able to do this, and it would be ludicrous to ask them to do it. But the Ohio State football players are not normal human beings in terms of size, speed, strength, etc. So, yeah, that's just one of those things that, again, like, go in with absolutely no expectations. But I think there's a possibility you will be pleasantly surprised if you go in with no expectations.
Well, this is Bam Childers kind of went through this as well. And then you kind of floating back and forth between two positions. Then he stayed in the NFL for like 6 or 7 years, maybe at receiver, though. I don't know how it's going to work out for Demario.
Next one from at Mars Hotel, all caps, G-E-E. So he was the former president of Ohio State on 2 different occasions, wore a bow tie, and hoped Jim Tressel didn't fire him. Sometimes said things he shouldn't have said out loud.
Well, yes, maybe. But also maybe we shouldn't have been so sensitive about some of the things he said. But not the bad stuff. Only the good stuff.
Next one from Nate Hiles, who has a great spoonerism of a Twitter name at hate_Niles, which is a perfectly viable Frasier take, if you ask me. He says, Demario McCall content or we riot. I think we've prevented a riot. And, I don't want to throw around the word hero, but I mean, I don't know how else to describe us. We've prevented a riot today. Last one from at Carter Cottons. Would love to hear about the Seven Banks injury situation. He's a guy who will be important this year. Yeah, and I think we touched on that as well. And that he will be back for fall camp, and he'll be doing all the mental reps and things like that. But losing spring ball for 2 years in a row, Dave talked about how it's frustrating. I liked what he said. This was like last week he talked about it. It was like, yeah, it's frustrating and you lose sleep over it and you hate it and it kills you, but you can't let it bother you and you have to move on. It's like, but you just said that it hurts and it's terrible. But again, like you can't do anything about it other than you try to get the mental reps and stuff like that. Being a veteran, you would think, Tom, just having the fall camp would provide him possibly enough time, because this is a guy who, as a sophomore played a little bit, played enough to where you're expecting good things as a junior. And I don't think he was a disappointment last year. I just he wasn't what juniors tend to be at Ohio State, unless maybe it's Damon Arnett. Yeah, you have, I think this is the just overall trend where the further you are into your career and the more reps you have, the less important every additional individual rep is probably. So, for guys who are coming in like Denzel Burke, where this is their first spring, like this is super important, and it's still extremely important, and arguably more important for the second year guys, because you're not really expected to play your first year. So the Cam Martinez type guys, really important for them to potentially get some of these like meaningful reps and really start to turn the corner in terms of their career. Once you're in Seven Banks' shoes, where this is his 4th year, right? So, you've kind of seen it, and he's not a member of that 2,000 rep club where they're really not that worried about it, but he's getting there. And the whole point of the 2,000 rep club is like, okay, you've done it. We know you can, we know you've done it. We've seen you do it. It'll be okay. You don't need to, we think it's more important to give the younger guys these reps because they're going to benefit more from them. So he's not someone that, I think earlier you said like he's not someone that, is like it matters at all that he's out. It matters that he's out, but it doesn't matter nearly as much that he's out as compared to some of these guys who are like the younger guys starting out, where they probably benefit more from those spring reps. So yeah, it's not great. You would obviously prefer to have him there, but it's not a total disaster. But you would also, the two guys who they're looking at probably as their starting corners going into the year, Cam Brown and Seven Banks, both being out for spring, like not being able to really go in spring, like that's not ideal at a position where I think, they were coming into this year thinking like this is probably the big question mark on this team, and then neither of the projected probably starters are going to be able to practice really this spring. Like that's not ideal.
Well, when you put it that way, Tom, you try to scare people by saying, "Hey, the two starting corners aren't, they're out for spring." Like when you speak it, that's terrifying.
This is why they're only going to play 12 games. Obviously, are you just figuring this out? Come on.
Oh, regarding one of the questions earlier about like spring standouts, Denzel Burke, um, Matt Barnes, who talked to him, said he was innate at what he's doing at corner and has very, very natural feet and just a natural corner. And again, as we said in the last show, this is a guy who was mostly a receiver in high school. So to already be impressing, and that's kind of what it takes, just these natural athletes. Like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. Like Emeka Egbuka, I'm sure he could be doing the same thing at corner that he's doing at receiver right now. And he was out there running with the receivers, catching balls and looking just completely fine. And Denzel Burke with already receiving the first day after the first practice. Ryan Day was already talking about him, and then this most recent practice on Wednesday, Matt Barnes was talking about him. So maybe he's on the verge of being one of those spring standouts and gotten a lead, as we've talked about many times, over his classmates J.K. Johnson and Jordan Hancock.
Well, and again, let's have the freshman corner conversation. You can stand out as a true freshman corner in the spring, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a starter or even necessary play a whole heck of a lot during most of the season. Like if you were like really on the fast track as a corner, like we'll see you maybe in November. Like maybe that's just keep the expectations in check there, where there's yes, it's possible if you see him on the field very early in the season, like in like meaningful plays, meaningful downs, like in the Oregon game or something has either gone tremendously right with his development or tremendously wrong with the health or ability or availability of some of the other guys in that corner room. And you'll probably know relatively quickly. But don't expect him to play, and if he does play, don't expect super fantastic results immediately, because that's just not how it works at corner. But if he's on, if he is at least a viable option at some point this year, that is a tremendous boon to that room, because they need as many viable options as they can. And if you're not relying on true freshmen to be able to do that, but if they can, like that's a huge shot in the arm for them.
It is. And like I said, we will have video posted here this afternoon on BuckeyeScoop.com of all of this, or at least on our YouTube page. And I'll probably throw the video in the practice report that I wrote up today as well. So you can find all of that there probably before you get to listen to this. I could time it that way. Now, Tom's going to control the YouTube version of this, so I might have to race against the clock here, but you know what? That's fine. I don't mind taking my time so that Tom can get the video out and reign in all the glory.
That's the other reason you didn't want to do this live. In addition to your total lack of preparation, you didn't want this up before the other video was up. I understand.
Hey, I had to get up at like 6:30 to be out of the house by 7. Nobody's had to do that.
Do you know how I know you're not a youth hockey coach? Because you're complaining about that. I set my alarm earlier than that on about 17 of the last 20 Saturday mornings. So why don't you cry about it?
I am. When my alarm goes off that early, I have no idea what it means. Like, what is this? What is it? Who is in this house? What is going on?
There's a time before the sun comes up? What?
Yeah, it's terrible. But anything else from anybody? You got anything, Tom?
No, I think we have caught up with all the listener questions, and we've addressed the morning scoop topics for this week. And so yeah, I think we're good until next week, when we might do 2 or 3 more shows.
I can't wait till you get to watch it. Now, again, I watch practice mostly through the viewfinder of a video camera. You'll get to watch it through your lens thing of your camera, and I'm going to be like, Tom, who did this? Who stood out? What did you see here? Who's the number 3 running back, and all of that, and you'll be like,
Tony, it's too early to say.
Yeah, it's a bunch of crap.
Only the 8th practice of spring ball. Too early to say.
Maybe the 9th practice. If we had gotten to shoot the 9th practice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I look forward to that. Tom will have photos of that on Monday, so you'll get to see all of these exciting pictures of the quarterbacks and the receivers and the running backs.
Probably defensive linemen. They're usually practicing pretty close to where we
Right
are, so you
there,
get
man.
pretty good pictures of them. So
So just bring several lenses because you'll need a lens of whether they're 4 feet away from you and then also 400 feet. So, or just, zoom on your phone.
There you go. You're an expert.
So, we want to thank you all for listening. Thank you all for watching. If you like Ohio State football, I think you guys should check out BuckeyeScoop.com. I know a lot of you already do. If you haven't yet, I honestly don't think you exist. So I don't even know who I'm talking to at this point. It's Friday. I've been up since 6:30, and it is Friday, right, Tom?
It is Friday. I would just like to say I would like to meet the person who is interested enough in Ohio State football to listen to a third podcast from us talking about it and do a 45-minute breakdown of the first 23 minutes of a practice, but then also is not interested enough to become a member of BuckeyeScoop.com. I would like to meet that person and understand what is going on in their lives, because I don't that does not compute. And
I'll go ahead and put Tom's phone number on the write up from this post so that person can get in contact with you and then just go out for pizza.
Just DM me at Tony Gerdeman.
All right, Tom, I got to go. It's the weekend. I got a lot of partying to do. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching, and have a great weekend.